Hello and welcome. Francis here. Thank you for coming back to my channel. If this is your first time here, I bid thee welcome. There is a subscribe button below and a bell if you want to be notified when I upload more content, and I do that on a rather ad hoc basis. So in this video, it's hopefully be a little bit more clearer than a recent Facebook Live that I did, because I jumped down a number of worm tunnels and I don't know if I ended up making sense. So I'm trying to do the whole video again and hopefully sticking to the subject. And it's kind of a very broad one, I guess. It's more of a reaction to a post that I saw and how it was handled, and just sort of adding my 2 cents. And sometimes I feel that we're in a very sort of reactionary world, and when you're dealing with people on social media too, there often isn't the requirement or the opportunity to just pause and look at things from a different perspective. People seem to, if you question them or you have a different opinion, they just like to shut you down. And they don't understand or want to understand if you're coming from a different point of view. And in this situation, and I suppose it's a little bit with hindsight as well, it's raised a few questions that I had, and I thought maybe it's too bigger a question or a topic to put on that Facebook group. So I'll just make a video where I'm actually airing some of my thoughts. The video on the live feed didn't really be congruent. I just said I jumped down worm tunnels. So hopefully this is a little bit better. I've made some notes. If you see me looking down, this is what I'm trying to refer to. So I'm just going to start off with, we've just gone through a new moon. So the new moon was yesterday, the 1st of April, new moon in Aries. So it's like everything's off on wild abandon, foot on the accelerator, such so to speak. There's a lot of cosmic things happening as well. We've also got Chiron, the wounded healer, coming up, sort of revealing all our wounds. And the nodes are moved, and we've got coming up to some major alignments later on in the month. On top of that, we've got a war situation in the Ukraine and Russia. We've got tension building up in relation to China. Here in Australia, we've got, I don't know, it seems to be a very narcissistic Prime Minister. Can I say that? I don't know. But there's a whole lot of things bubbling up to the surface. And not to mention or forget the pandemic. 2 and a bit years, we're still going through COVID restrictions. Everybody's over it. We've got conspiracy theories left, right and centre on both sides of the fence. There's talk of a new world order. We've got people refusing to be subjected to suppression. And a lot of these things haven't just happened recently. They've been bubbling away over the last couple of years. And I remember back in the 90s when I did numerology, my teacher at the time was talking about the breaking down of the old world order and the new order coming through. And it certainly seems a little bit like that, but I don't know, us humans, we seem to be dragging our feet in relation to change. We don't like change, but we're in a world of change at the moment. So there's a whole lot of background stuff happening. And I guess too, if you are on a spiritual path or an energetic path, and you are opening up, becoming more and more aware of these energies, you're probably becoming more and more aware of the low energies of the anger, of the hatred, of the negativity. It seems to be everywhere. Everybody's fighting. And I think this has sort of raised the question as to, are we actually consciously or unconsciously adding to the deceiver up there? We've also had what happened at the Oscars, where there's a whole different interpretations and angles that could be taken in relation to what happened at the Oscars, but we won't go into that because that's another tunnel to fall down. And it's making me wonder where the path of reason and light is. Now, that might be a bit of a puzzling comment to make for someone who's written a book on the Dark Goddess, but there's a huge backlash, I feel, within the witchcraft community in particular, for anything that seems to be light or perceived as light or reason. There is definitely an aesthetic of dark, spooky stuff coming through. The whole witchcraft movement, and this isn't recent, so it's been the last, 5-10 years, could be even longer, is moving, or seems to be moving, away from the more devotional religious aspect to witchcraft, stemming from initiatory contemporary witchcraft of Gerald Gardner and Alex Sanders, to a very operative, spell-driven, or definitely unreligious, atheistic, non-believing, practical practice, where, if anything, it's ancestor-based or spirit. So it's almost like spirits, whatever spirits are, or whoever they are, and ancestors seem to have replaced worship of deity, which is fine, each to their own. So what I think I'm getting at is that let's move from more of a sort of sit, wait, and observe practice or technique or a process to a instantaneous, got to do something now. We're swinging out of control from that middle path. And I'm just going to get this up. This is a painting of the Tree of Life found in Kabbalah, and it's part of my background as well. And we are basically down here at Malkuth, and what we want to do is get up to here. Ketha, Godhead, divine, raising our vibration to our higher consciousness, that sort of thing. And in the Tree of Life, we have these three pillars. We have severity, we have mercy, and in the middle we have the middle pillar. And the middle pillar is all about balance, about equilibrium. It's like, yes, we do sort of like ebb and flow between the two pillars of severity and mercy, but the objective is to find that middle path, that middle way, to sort of quote Buddhist teachings as well. And when we tend to focus on more reactionary magic, we tend to not be walking on that middle path. And I'm not saying it's bad or wrong. I'm just saying sometimes we need to take a breath and step back and look at the whole picture. And what sort of spurred these thoughts being churning around in my head is that recently there was a post on social media, which is probably one of the worst places for someone like me to be on, about how can I word it? I don't want to name the group and I don't want to name the person, but basically the situation is that allegedly someone treated them real bad, and this is just a paraphrase of theirs, and this person, quotes, deserves to, or it's not actually a quote, deserves to burn. And so they're wanting curses and advice on curses. Okay, each to their own. What sort of started me thinking, and what sort of resulted to this post, was how that situation was handled, or has been handled up to now. The very first post or response to that was by a moderator who basically said, not every witch adheres to the threefold law of return, so we don't want any of the witches read stuff. Fair enough. But I thought that was a little bit disappointing for that to be the first posting from a moderator, and there's a number of moderators on the group. And my reasoning for that is going back to the original post. They want the perpetrator or the alleged perpetrator to burn. Now, that wasn't put in quotes. So it sort of opens the question, what do they mean by burn? physically burn? Do they want to pour petrol over that person and set them alight? Do they want their car or house to explode and for them to be consumed by flame? Do they want them to die through burns, be burnt alive? Do they want them to receive third-degree burns? Or is it a figuratively, not literally at all? One person did query that, about whether the moderator was adhering to the harm of another person. And instead of that being sort of explained, the questioner was basically shot down. I know I'm sort of like over-exaggerating, maybe I am, but there were comments on that thread about how people have been cursing since day dot, so to speak, that, it's none of our business as to how somebody should do their magic or their situation. And I felt sorry for that questioner because I was actually wondering the same question as well, based purely by what was written, that the person had put that their perpetrator had, or alleged perpetrator had hurt them, and they deserved to burn. What does that actually mean? No one was questioning that at all. And that could actually open the fact, if they were wanting that person to die, if they were that vengeful, that hurtful, that they wanted that person to die, open the fact that, and I suppose this is sort of really far right field, if they wanted to commit murder, then I suppose in some way, everybody who responded to that post could be an attributee after the fact, because they were all giving their 2 cents worth of how you could curse somebody without thinking about the end result. Now, it's a very tricky situation, I understand that, but again, I thought a bit of clarity needed to be asked or set in place before all the advice as to how to curse somebody should have been given, instead of shutting down the one person who questioned what exactly did the person actually mean, or was actually the motive. If it was something untoward, something illegal, was that okay? I think also the whole situation is that we do not know. We don't know the backstory. And I suppose in a way we don't need to know the backstory. But when it comes to cursing, especially curses where the outcome could be death, and the interest these days with witchcraft to absorb a lot of other cultural or spiritual techniques, without any, I wouldn't say without any moral compass, but a lot of people are sort of absorbing techniques where they don't really understand or haven't been trained in them. They've read a book or seen something posted on Instagram or something rather about that. This sort of vengeful form of magic can actually, on some level, do a little bit more harm than good, I guess is what I'm trying to say, if only on an energetic level. I said I'm not against cursing. I think that there's a time and place for everything, but we need to be sure of the role that we are playing, and I think that's the main thing. At the end of the day, we are all energetic beings, and as I said earlier, all this anger, hatred, vindictive energy is very low-lying energy, and it keeps us in a very low negative sphere. There are magical universal laws, in particular law of like attracts like. So if our fixation is on revenge, operative, sort of smiting people who may upset us, not only is that a sign of magical immaturity, but it also keeps us on an energetic level very low-lying, and on a soul perspective, that is not the objective as to why we're incarnated in the first place. The whole idea of our soul, that we're incarnated, is for our soul to experience and then to evolve, basically. At least that's my opinion. When we focus on more positive energy, it actually helps lift us. And already thoughts are coming in as to there's been a rise in, say, mental health conditions, etc., etc. Is that sort of a contributing fact or flow-on effect from everybody, and I'm talking very broadly here, or this increasing energy that is negative? Something to think about. Because, as I said, we are all energetic beings. At the end of the day, we pick up on energy. If this is something that you're not really aware of, it could actually be affecting you on a different level. It also means that we react in certain ways, and when someone does us harm, or we experience things that aren't in alignment to us or that we don't like, how we react to that could also be affected by our own energetic field and the tools that we have in relation to dealing with negative energy or circumstances that go against us. At the end of the day, we are always going to meet people that we don't like, they don't like us, our energies are going to clash, people are going to upset us, going to hurt us, going to treat us bad and mean and nasty, and we're going to do the same thing to people as well. I think it's very narcissistic of us, and that's another word that gets bandied around a lot these days, to think that, you know, we are always the victim. We never do anything wrong for anybody else. It's very naive. It's eeks of spiritual toxicity, and that's another problem that we have in the spiritual realms as well. So when it comes to cursing or seeking revenge, one of the best advice that I can offer, and that actually comes from Damien Eccles' book, High Magic, and I think I've mentioned this before. I really enjoy reading this book because he comes up with his interpretations of things based on his situation and his experience. Opens up a whole range of really interesting dynamics, and he uses a lot of analogies which make a lot of sense. At the end of the day, if you want to curse somebody, what he said, and I am paraphrasing hugely, is that if you want to spit poison at somebody, just remember that you are going to swallow or absorb part of that poison yourself. In other words, if you are going to curse somebody, you have to do that with a degree of passion, anger, hatred yourself. Okay. On an energetic level, that's very low-lying stuff. You're fighting fire with fire. You're just putting more gasoline on the burning fire. It really can wear us down if that is our objective. It can be, if we're constantly in that mind frame, that sort of superstitious, fearful, vengeful mind frame, that affects our whole energy system. And what affects our energy system, our auric field, will eventually manifest physically. And this is where, in a lot of the metaphysical teachers or teachings talk about illnesses appearing in the physical realm. It's usually something, usually a thought that appears out in our auric field or our energetic environment. And over time, if it's not being dealt with, it will start repairing. It's a bit like a message from spirit or your guides or God, so to speak, will keep appearing first in a dream, and then that dream will become a nightmare if we do not pick up on that message. I guess it depends on where you fit in your belief within the metaphysics. But because I've done many years of metaphysical training, that's one of my first interest that got me into the craft, I understand completely where he's coming from. It's, if we're going to, even if it's just passing, we absorb part of that hatred into us. And then it sort of makes us a little bit more aware as to, or on edge probably, as to the other person's reaction. We're going to curse them. Good, okay, go ahead. What happens if our action, our curse, succeeded and that had a flow-on effect to somebody else? Can we handle that? Are we able to completely shut ourselves off, being an energetic being? Are we capable of doing that? If we are, that could actually show that we have no conscience in ourselves. So there are a whole range of layers that coming through. I personally don't like the eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth mentality. That's just me. That could be just the sign of my contemporary witchcraft upbringing. I think too, in this particular situation, we don't know all the ins and outs. None of that was disclosed. Yet people were rushing in with advice without really taking full responsibility of any potential consequence. Magic, after all, is not a game. It's not something to be played at. Again, this could be showing my age. There's a lot of alleged teachings out there which have been watered down, at least in my opinion. And the underlying message, at least what I was taught about taking responsibility for your action, just seems to be eluded. It's not encouraged. So I found it really interesting, and I'm going to wrap this up because we've gone over the 20-minute mark, that just after a new moon, this request, or just around the new moon, this request for cursing appeared right when Chiron has reared its head, Chiron, the wounded healer, how no one sort of went, oh, pause for a moment, what do you mean? What happened? To me, it sounded, just reading it black and white, very reactionary, very emotional. They got hurt. Hurt in what way? Physically, mentally, financially, spiritually, emotionally? To me, it sounded very sort of revengeful. And at least in my path, revengeful magic, I'm not saying I'm against it, but it does come with its own consequences. And I'm the type of person that, I will prefer to work through meditation, through mantras, tarot cards reading even, to find that place of clarity, because when you're working from a place of emotion, we're not always clear, because we also can lose sight of the consequence and the responsibility that we play, even if it's giving advice. So it's a little bit long-winded. I do apologise. I've gone completely off my notes. Just some food for thoughts. Be interested in hearing your comments. Put them below. And apart from that, blessings.